EHPN, the Entertainment and History Programming Network. Today we've had 4 great presidential matchups in our Tournament of Presidents. McCain?
You're right, Jacob. Now let's get to the highlights. For our 8 and 9 matchup between Harry S. Truman and Theodore Roosevelt, Theodore jumped out to an early lead with his personal accomplishments. Truman didn't come back with his domestic policy, but Theodore got sent over the edge and won the matchup with his legacy. He was known as the first modern president of the United States of America, and then that knocked Truman out of the race for presidential cup.
That's pretty intense, but I've seen tweets about this matchup, and some of their tactics have reached our top 10 tactics of the day, and will be available online tonight. For our next matchup, we have a 4-5, and it pits Franklin Delano Roosevelt against George Washington, the first president of the United States. To begin, George Washington started off in the lead with his personal accomplishments. Then, Franklin goes on an unanswered run and holds off the late comeback by George Washington. FDR moves on to the semifinals.
That was a good matchup, but I've been seeing a lot of smack with Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton on Twitter. Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton were our 3-6 matchup. Ronald Reagan fell behind Clinton in personal accomplishments, but by the end of the match, Reagan had won. During the match, Bill Clinton had problems focusing on his presidency as he was too busy focusing on internal affairs. Reagan moves on to the semifinals.
I guess Clinton should have just kept his mouth shut. Anyway, up next we have Barack Obama and John F. Kennedy, 2 very athletic presidents who have appeared on our brother show, ESPN. The 7-10 matchup put John F. Kennedy against Barack Obama. JFK cruised to an easy win in this one. He won every category and Obama never stood a chance. JFK moves on to face Thomas Jefferson in our second round.
It's been quite the day in the presidential tournament. Our number 1 seed, Abraham Lincoln, squared off against Theodore Roosevelt in a matchup that was declared an uneven match. For the first second round matchup, Theodore Roosevelt faced off against Abraham Lincoln, the 8 seed versus the 1 seed. Theodore takes an early lead, but Abraham Lincoln ends up the winner. Moving on to face FDR.
Looks like Honest Abe pulled through against the 8 seed. But he has a tough matchup against Franklin tomorrow. For now, let's get to the next matchup. The final second round matchup is the 2 seed Thomas Jefferson versus the 10 seed John F. Kennedy. Thomas Jefferson takes a huge lead with his personal accomplishment, and JFK is never even in the race. Thomas Jefferson advances to the semifinals to face Ronald Reagan. Wow, what an exciting day in the historical world. The number 4 seed, Franklin Roosevelt, has upset the number 1 seed, Abraham Lincoln. In this exciting matchup, FDR beats Abraham Lincoln, the 4 seed versus the 1. Such a shock to everyone. FDR takes a slim lead in personal accomplishments to begin the match. In domestic policy, Abraham Lincoln takes a sizable lead, but FDR easily catches back up in foreign policies. In the end, FDR gets the nod as his 12 years in office proved to be too much for Abraham Lincoln. FDR has made it to the finals, and his opponent remains unknown.
Jacob, in all my days of broadcasting, I've never seen such a greater upset. But let's see how Jefferson does against Ronald Reagan. Our other semifinal matchup is a 2 seed versus a 3 seed, Thomas Jefferson versus Ronald Reagan. Thomas Jefferson takes an early lead on Reagan with personal accomplishments. Reagan slowly climbs back into the game, but then Thomas Jefferson pulled away in public opinion. By the end of the matchup, Thomas had won and is moving on to the finals to face Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
FDR versus Thomas Jefferson is sure to be the matchup of the ages. Stay tuned for the results, everyone. You can only find this type of action on EHPN. Today we have a special guest on EHPN, and he just so happens to be the first winner of our presidential tournament. The winner of our tournament is President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Mr. President, please explain your matchup against Thomas Jefferson.
Well, Jacob, Thomas was a very tough opponent, and he was such a great president, I just happened to be on my A game. To begin our game, I came out cold and couldn't answer to his personal accomplishments. When we got to domestic policy, foreign policy, and public opinion, I began to make my comeback. I guess creating Social Security and serving 12 years as a president was just a little too much to take. After the controversies, we were in the dead tie and it all came down to legacy. Although he was a man of the people, I changed America forever and brought us back to becoming an economic power.
Wow, thank you, Franklin, and great job on your win.
Thank you.
That concludes our special 4-day program and the presidential tournament. Come back next week to view the highlights of the United States tournament. Thank you for tuning in to EHPN.